Hello, my name is Leonora Millin of 39 Cae Lewis, Tongwynlais, and I am here to have a chat about my childhood. Well, I was born in Ironbridge Road, and the mother and father, there was already one sister older than me, and coming after me there was a brother. So we were five humans living in a two-bedroom cottage down by the park, and made of stone. There was just one living room and another little room which we called the kitchen, and two bedrooms with the winding stairs, and a garden, little back garden, the toilet outside, of course, and my dad, Sidney Thomas Millin, was in the First World War, 1914 to 1918, and coming back home safely, he met my mother, who was from Cardiff, and got married and had 5 children altogether, but I only knew 3 with myself. And he had work on the railway, and not very well paid, but it was work. Now, he was very, very strict at the table. Tea table. If we dared to giggle, he would go mad. And of course we had a parrot at that time. His mother lived in Bath, and when she got too old, which was only in her 70s, she came to us to live and brought the parrot with her. And of course this parrot, he got to scream, and of course we'd be at the table and the parrot would nod in his head and say, "Oh, fancy that, fancy that." And of course we'd start to giggle and we'd all be in trouble. I can't remember actually having anything drastic done, but we were warned, you know. Anyway, time went on. And my mother died when I was 9 of cancer. And there again, lovely neighbours, because my father had to work with 3 children to keep. He had to work. Plate laying in Rada Yard, they called it then. And of course we were quite near there then, living down there. And he was also in the St John's Ambulance Brigade. And he used to go out on a Thursday evening for the meetings. And he was in Queen Street when Cardiff had the Blitz. He was up there, and of course he had to walk home from Cardiff to Tongwynlais, and he was getting called in for minor injuries, and people in tents, some of them, just to patch them up. 2 o'clock in the morning he got home. He also had a little room in the first cottage we lived in. He had a little room in the back, and apparently he was a qualified shoemaker. My father then had an allotment on Station Road, and which used to provide us with most of our veg, of course. And that went down very well. And of course there was a rationing as well. 2 ounces of this and 2 ounces of that. You wouldn't dare waste a thing. I think it's still in me not to waste food. And on a Tuesday, there was a Mr. Russell. He had a greengrocery shop down in Market Street, and he'd have bananas in, and there'd be a mad dash to join the queue to have bananas. And as I say, most of the men then had allotment along Station Road, and helped us out to the end with the food. And if one had too many onions, they'd swap with somebody who had too many carrots and all this and that. And we'd have breakfast was usually toast, sort of. And lunch then, a couple of sandwiches. Tea. Usually Monday's tea was left over from Sunday because Monday was a wash day which took all day. Not like today, push it in the machine and leave it, because there had to be a bowl of starch, a bowl of glue, a scrubbing brush, a scrubbing board, and a great big mandrel that took 2 people to turn the wheel. And the toilet, of course, was the other side of the yard, not far, but we had to go out. I didn't even have radios then. We had to make our own enjoyment. I used to go out on the front there. There was a garage there then, and we'd go out. And there was one girl who was a little bit older than the rest of us. She was the boss. She'd line us all up in front of this garage. Now we'll take your photograph. Smile, now. And what happened, there wasn't a film and a camera was there. But we had fun. You know, the children don't seem to have fun these days like we did. And then we'd go down the long wood and pick flowers there. And then back up the canal bank. We used to do a lot of walking. Tremendous lot of walking we do. Well, that's the only way we had to get about. We had far more freedom as children and that they got these days. And our parents weren't afraid to let us out, which is getting to it, isn't it now? And we'd be out all day on school holidays. Pick blackberries when it was blackberry time. We'd go, and then there was the odd barge coming through from Pontypridd, and there was a working lock there, and going down Ironbridge Road. And he'd stop there, horse roll, of course. He'd stop there, and we'd all lined up. Come on, you lot, he'd say, get in. We should think it was lovely. Yeah, it was lovely. And we'd get in, because there was the family next door to us, had 7 children, and we were 3, you see the tell. And there was one lower bit down, near Michael's house, with 5. So our own little village. And we'd line up. He'd take us as far as Melling Griffith, because that was still working then. And right kids, off you go. And then of course we'd have to walk back. And we didn't mind it a bit. We thought it was lovely. So our parents always knew where they were. And then we'd go blackberrying on the railway line. Our parents made jam out of it. And no, there was the single line going from, as I said, not the Iron Bridge, to the bridge by the park. There was a station master there, and I think the trains only went as far as Taswell, and then they had to get off. If they wanted to go further on, they had to get off. But transport was few and far between in those days. Well, the canal itself was just running through, and it was a shame that when they altered the roads, they didn't use that as a picnic area, because it was a nice spot. There again, we had a few narrow escapes, getting drowned. We'd be jumping off this tall pillar and landing upstream instead. But well, of course, the barges, there weren't only horses kept there, but the barges then were going to Melling Griffith Tin Works. And that's where we used to get the lifts from. And everyone, I think, in the village had what they called a bake stone, made in Melling Griffith. And then we used to go and sit on on the railings by the railroad, and watched the trains go by, and they'd all wave to us. Yes, they'd all wave. The first person who I knew with a car, he lived opposite the school. He lived in Ironbridge Road, and he worked for the South Wales Echo as a reporter. And of course there were no garages built with houses, but opposite our little cottage there was this space, and he built a garage for his little car. But what we used to like, if he saw us coming out of school and he was on his way down to Ironbridge Road, "Come on, you kids," he'd say. How he got us all in, I do not know. He wouldn't be allowed to now. Because as I say, there was about 10 of us all. We'd all be given the royal wave to our mates, you know, we go back. Things like that used to please us. And as I say, we all used to congregate there. And it was in ruins. And used to play hide and seek and whatever. And if there was a tree with some fruit on, the boys would be up there. And this boy came running out the one evening, and he said, "I'm not going in there again." So the woman said, "Why?" "Oh, no, I'm not going in. I'm not." I said, "Why? What's there?" "A ghost." And there was a mirror that had been left behind, and he'd seen his own reflection. But it was sad, really. Apparently, the Lewis family were very good to the village, but that's a bit before my time. And well, I went into disrepair, and of course the Lewis family, Mrs. Lewis, she was a widow, she married Disraeli. And it just went from there, it went down of derelict. And the boys used to go there. There was a chap over there used to go for wood, firewood, and the boys used to go there to play. And one day the ceiling fell on the top of the wood and killed him. And it went on for quite a while. And this little boy got killed, Andrew something. He was playing there in the old stables with other children. And something happened there and he got killed. So after that, they demolished it. Anyway, school days, I used to like going to school. Yes. We had to walk then from Ironbridge Road down the bottom by the park, right up to Wellington Street. Do you know Wellington Street? There was just a small classroom there, 3 small classrooms, 3 ladies taking them, and we used to have to walk right through, and we would sit down and they'd tell us stories. They were lovely ladies. There was a Miss Sadler and a Miss Smith, and I think there was a Miss Wimbley, I think. Anyway, about halfway through, right, time for heads down. So we put our heads and have a little nap and carry on there. And the same thing happened day after day, of course. And until we got, that was when we were 4-year-old. And then when we got to 7, we came down to the primary school here, which was good because it wasn't as far to walk and there was more room. And we had, there was a Miss Hughes, Miss Jenkins, Miss Phillips, Mr. Puffy. The headmaster then was a Mr. John. Different to all these days, we respected our teachers, you know. And we wouldn't dare go home and say we'd had the cane, because the stock answer was always, "You must have deserved it." So we all knew not to go home and complain. Anyway, yeah. went until I was 11, and it was then there was what they called a scholarship. And I think it's what they call it these days, EFC or whatever. And they had homework to do, of course, for the scholarship. So I faithfully did the homework and took it back in. Now the scholarship was on the Tuesday, but on the Saturday before, I picked up scarlet fever. And I was most annoyed. Not so much because I was missing the scholarship, but I'd done all the homework. Anyway, got over that. And when I was, just when the war finished, when I was about 14, they built this new school in Whitchurch. So once you were 11, you had to go to Whitchurch. It wasn't quite the same. But and of course we had to change classrooms for every lesson and all of that. But well, I think, of course, I left school, but owing to me not being able to sit the scholarship, the headmaster did try, was Mr. John from Whitchurch. He did try for me to sit the following year, but it was something to do with the month I was born in. He couldn't do it. So of course I left school at 14 and I went straight to work. This is my church, which I was brought up in many, many years ago. Bethesda Congregational it was then, in those days. And we had to behave ourselves, we did. We wouldn't dare laugh in church. Terrible thing to laugh in church. And morning, 10:30. Afternoon, Sunday school, 2:30. 6 o'clock evening service. And of course it was walking now from the bottom of Ironbridge Road up to I got a photograph there, to the church. And there was an old minister there, full of the hoil, as they call it. And because the pupils, well, the church is large, and the pupils are way up. And he was and he was dressed in black always. He was bending over this and slamming in Bibles, huge Bibles in those days. And of course, us kids would start to giggle, and we'd all be in trouble. Fancy laughing in chapel. Anyway, we had weekday meetings, Band of Hope, just to have the magic lanterns, and then of course the war came, and things like that stopped. So we used to then the vestry then isn't as it is now. It wasn't as grand then. But we used to open it a couple of times a week because there were soldiers stationed at Castle Cork, and we used to open it for them to have a couple of hours out and write letters to their families. And the secretary of the chapel then, Miss Davis, she came in to open up and found the ceiling on the floor. It was getting a bit ancient, so I think the decision then was made to demolish that and just use what we've got now, of course. Well, we used to have table tennis club there in the church, and we'd have opponents from other churches playing. I think the boys had a football team, as far as I can remember back. I think there was a football team. Yes, I'm sure there was. Not that I was interested in football, but I used to go to the table tennis one. The highlights of the year in chapel, Whitson, with the procession and the brass band, our own brass band. And I think the 5 churches here then, only a quarter the size of the village. And that was the one new dress we had every year, was for the march. And that was it. And anyway, we'd all join up. And we'd get threatened from Christmas till then, if we didn't believe ourselves, behave ourselves, you shouldn't march with a band. And we thought that was awful. It was terrible not to march with a band. And we used to go around the village, just this estate then wasn't built. It was the Green Meadow estate. And we used to go around, and then we'd go back to our own churches for tea. And then we'd go down the park, all of us together, and have sports and all. The band be there playing, the ice cream, the vendors, they'd be there. And to this day, I can never remember the end of a baseball match. It was a standing joke. Because as the one was bowled out, you just tie on in the end, you see. Then the one older member, he went on a winter night, we had what they call the tortoise stoves. And they were lovely warm, they were. And we used to gather round there and used to tell us ghost stories. Next door to the chapel, there was a greengrocer. And what used to annoy us as kids, we were still in the infant school then, if we'd misbehaved ourselves, the teacher would send us to that shop for a cane to punish us with. Yeah, there was that, and then there was, we had an antique shop there, yeah, and a shoe shop, which was very good shoe shop, and a little tuck shop, and funny enough, the man's name was Tuck. He used to have benches along the wall, and the boys used to go in, they'd have a drink and ice cream, and never any trouble. They would just sit there and converse with him and themselves. And then there was a little house, a little front room house, I suppose, stall you'd call it. There was a lady there just selling bits and pieces. And then of course across the road was where I lived. And then there was 1, 2, 3, 4 doors down from there, which is another thing I always laugh about. I think that high step is still there actually along with the road. My father said to me this one day, "Will you take these shoes back to Mrs. Turner?" She wanted them healed on your way back to school. Yes, all right. Well, I went, and I was never very big for my age. I locked the door, and there was this steep step, and there was her towering above me, draped in black. She's just what they call a toque. And I dropped the shoes and I ran. And funny enough, fair play for her. She walked down and she said to my father, "You little girl seem to be in a hurry." That was some of the characters we had, you know. We had some people who never knew their real names, just characters. Yes, Christmas in my house, it was an excitable time, although we never had an awful lot. And my brother, because my sister and myself, we used to have a little doll each. And my brother said, "Why can't I have a little doll?" All right, next Christmas, my mother bought him a little doll. He'd play with it for about a week, and then away it would go. So what she used to do, she'd put a new outfit on it, and put the same one back in. Because he don't use, it was only to say he had it, because we had one. And there again, we used to have go to carol singing, and the band, we still had our own band. They used to come, and those who lived in the village mostly, they'd stop outside our house and play, and then they'd go down towards the railway line and across the line, across the bridge to this little farmhouse I was saying, Bales, and they'd sing, they'd play there, and I was back home to a meal. Of course, I didn't have the things then. By then, we did have a little radio by then. And of course, our lighting was candle. And up and down those stairs, it's a wonder we didn't have any fires. No, we'd all get together to have a little Christmas sort of how do you do then. And that was it. And New Year's Eve, we had the Christian Endeavour then. They would have a little do New Year's Eve. But, and we'd go to carol singing on New Year's Eve only until 12 o'clock. And there was one boy, he had a really lovely voice. He wouldn't let anyone else go with him. He used to go on his own because he had a lot more money than if we were with him. And there was an old chap, Seeley, living down the Canal Bank. He had like a little greengrocer, and we'd sing carols to him, and he'd listen, and he'd say, oh, I suppose I'd better give you something. Usually it was a couple of oranges or apples. Now don't you tell anyone else I've given you that. So, of course, New Year's Eve then, talking to the train, they'd put detonators on the line to make a bang. And everyone would gather down Lewis's Arms to have a sing song on New Year's Eve. They don't do it anymore. I think it was the local concerts that everyone took part in. When I was in my teens, that was. That was good. There were plenty of good things. But the one I would remember then would be the concerts in the village hall. Because everyone took part, you know. It was dancing, it was just whatever. And St David's Day, we'd always have a concert in the hall. And there was always little plays and all going on there on St David's Day. And then we'd have the afternoon off. Right, the war was declared, which was September the 3rd, 1939, wasn't it? Yes, and we were all wondering, just us kids, wondering just what war was, you know. And rationing started, and then we all had to queue for whatever was available. I will say this, we never went without a meal, you know, and people were healthy, you know, good meals and sharing, you see, and they still had the allotments going and they were still sharing from there. And then the soldiers used to come down from the castle for the dances, and they opened it for meals as well at one time. And they used to come down for the dances and any activity that was going on. And then we used to go there again, we mostly walking up to Glanslyn because there were no buses. And to be honest, we did used to have a lot of fun. It was only after we realised what a bad state the country was in. And there again, they managed to keep the churches open and the pubs, they managed. all those things were rationed. Because we all had evacuees as well. We had 2 brothers from Birmingham, and the one was only 4. And the oldest one, he was quite grown up for his age, you know. And as I say, when we had the Blitz in Cardiff, Roy, this little boy, we were all sitting there trembling, especially with my father being out as well. And he said, "Don't you worry, Auntie, I've sticked it before, we'll stick it again." I worked West Barrows now. I worked in there for a private company there. Rations came, and we'd have had tussles with people. I haven't got any rations, and whoever the husband was coming home for tea, and I got nothing for tea. But we survived. And there was a lovely spirit there, you know, proper villager spirit there was. I can't say we had a bad time during the war. Obviously we were too young to realise, and we did lose, I think it was 7 young men. I think we all, during the war, I think it was 7. When the news came through that war was over, great rejoicings, everyone appeared outside cheering, and there was a young lad, he was short of hearing, but he was a whiz with his accordion. He went all around the village playing his accordion. And of course they had celebratory concerts after in the hall as well. But I often think back to those days. You know, and of course clothing coupons. We had to be really careful that our clothes lasted. And we used to, yeah, we used to have, as I say, fun. Never had any money, but we didn't need money, we had fun. The shop I mentioned, opposite to Michael's, it was privately owned then, and it was called Manchester House. And there was the owners there, the daughter, myself, and one other person, and there was a bakery to the back. And this one chap, he used to bake every day. There was lovely smells. And on a Saturday there was one of my schoolmates, he used to deliver with the basket, you know. And Mr. Jakeman, the owner was called then, he used to bake us a mini loaf each. It would have been lovely. Anyway, as time went on, and they passed away, and they also used to use the ovens. Like for Christmas, people used to make East cakes, and if they had small cooking ovens at home, and they also, not that they were very plentiful then, they would also put chickens or turkeys in as well. And I think it was a penny for the small ones and 2pence for the big ones. And of course all open all hours. And they also had a little boy on his bike. Talking about Michael's house, Boothville, we used to give our orders in, of course, and this little boy used to deliver. And what did he do? He travelled the back bailey, into the back door, into the living room, out to the front door, with the boys sat on our groceries. He was what they call a rogue. He died young, actually. But I can always remember that. Sitting on our groceries. And we'd have sawdust on the floor. Sweep it up every night and have sawdust on the floor. And cellars underneath to keep the bacon fresh. And I think it's still there, actually, our cellar. And I worked there for 4 different employers. The one, of course, got too old and they passed on. The other one then, he had to work abroad, and he left, which was unusual in those days for people to work abroad. Yeah. And then somebody else turned up. And the last one I worked for, they were the husband was working in Barry, and for the one of the pharmaceutical things, I can't remember, Abbott Laboratories, Abbott. And he came one day and said he had the chance of going somewhere else. And his wife said, they had two little children then. His wife said, oh, what are you going to do? Well, he said, the thing is, if I take that job, I'd be going down a peg because it's different. Anyway, he carried on working in Barry, and then the place in Barry was closing and moving to Jarrow. And he said, I'd either go with them or just retire then. So when they decided to go to Jarrow with them, and they were there for a while. They're both dead now, but their daughter and son still keep in touch with me. They're both married, the son got 2 children, and they both keep in touch with me now. And Helen is 70 and her brother is 67. And then, as I say, I came, my employers moved away, and somebody else moved on. By then I was getting on 40 years, 50 years, and by the time I finished, I was, so what am I can't even remember my age now. I was well in my 70s, and I retired then and went to the charity shops in Richards. So I went to the George Hospice to work, and the lady working there, she used to live in Ironbridge Road years and years back, and she said one day, I'm going to Russell Rose to have my lunch. Oh, okay, right, off she went. When she came back, she said, I was talking to a lady in the shop. While she was waiting to be served, they were just chatting. And she said that whoever it was, oh, I'm from, are you from Richards? No, I'm from Tongwynlais. Oh, Chris said, I work with a lady from Tongwynlais. Who is she then? So she said my name, and we both laughed. And she, you know, she said, I can always remember the way she cuts the ham. And there was no machines there, it was all knife. And another time she went, and she came back with the same sort of story, and she said, there's another one that knows you. I said, who is that? And she could always remember the speed I totted up people's bills. There again, no computers, no nothing. And I said to my niece a couple of years back, I said, I'm thinking of retiring. What? She said. I said, I'm thinking of retiring. Oh. I said, you know, I worked for 80 years. 80 years? I said, yeah. Leaving school at 14. Straight into work. And I was 94 then.